Welcome back to Bourbon Beer and Basketball One-on-One, where we break down the game's biggest moments with a drink in hand and fire in our hearts. And folks, if you love March basketball, hell, if you love basketball, period, then you witnessed something special. St. John's just delivered a buzzer beater for the ages, toppling Kansas in a finish so dramatic you'd think it was scripted in Hollywood. The Red Storm under Rick Pitino's resurrected program just announced to the college basketball world, we're back and we're dangerous. This wasn't just any win. This was a statement. Kansas, a program dripping with championship pedigree, got stunned in the final seconds by a St. John's team that's been building something special in Queens. The final play, the execution, the absolute guts it took the darling of the game, Dylan Darling that is, the guts to knock down that shot with the game on the line after not scoring the entire game. This is the stuff that makes March Madness magical even before the calendar flips. Tonight, we're breaking down every second of that thrilling finish. How did St. John's draw up the perfect play? What does this win mean for their tournament resume? And can we talk about Rick Pitino turning this program around faster than anyone expected? Pour yourself something strong. Might I suggest Blayton's to match the drama? Because we're diving deep into this one of the season's most electric moments. This is Bourbon Beer and Basketball One-on-One, and we're talking St. John's shocking Kansas at the buzzer. Welcome to the show, my friend, co-host of Bronco Nation Live and founder of Bronco Nation Updates and Blue Elevation, Nick Wade. Nick, how you doing?
Hey, happy to be here.
Nick, you're currently in first place in the Bourbon Beer and Basketball Conference Draft Challenge, and you still got two teams in it, UConn and St. John's. Everyone else doesn't have a dog in the fight anymore. After the regular season round, you were dead last, and now you've risen from the ashes with two teams still to play. You've been propelled into first place over Casey, who has 11 points. How does it feel to have that pick, that first pick overall being the Big East, and it's the Big East teams that propelled you into first place?
It's just how you draw it up, right? No, I feel pretty good because, when we did this, we took on those assignments to cover the conference. Yep, I got the blessing of making that first pick. It looked like you had made the best pick when you picked the WCC, but I really was fond of Big East, and they didn't let me down. In fact, UConn has actually exceeded my expectations in the dance. I didn't expect them to get past the hot UCLA Bruins, but there they are in the Sweet 16 along with St. John's, and I'm wearing the red for the Johnnies.
St. John's stunning buzzer beater victory over Kansas was one of the most thrilling finishes of the college basketball season. The Red Storm, led by head coach Rick Pitino, pulled off the last-second heroics against the storied Jayhawks program in a game that showcased everything great about March Madness: clutch shots, defensive intensity, and pure drama. St. John's has been building momentum in the Big East under Pitino's leadership, and this signature win could be a program-defining moment that propels them into serious Final Four conversations. Let's set the scene, Nick. Where were you watching this game, and what was your immediate reaction when that buzzer beater went through the net?
I was on the edge of the couch watching it. We had just we saw St. John up big time, and then kind of dip there and allow the Kansas Jayhawks to get back in the game. Then some perfect time management and execution by the Red Storm, taking those fouls to give quietly, bleeding out the clock. And then the Jayhawks ran out of fouls to give. They were on the baseline with 3.9 seconds to go. And then you had, the player that Rick Pitino said earlier in the year that has some cojones that are like brass. Dylan Darling with the ball and driving and making that last second shot. And you could have probably heard me throughout my place, probably with an expletive of, yeah. So that's where I was, man.
Walk us through the final possession. What did St. John's do schematically to get that shot, and how much of it was pure execution versus Kansas making a defensive mistake?
Yeah, no, like I said, the Red Storm went with those strategic foul to give, quietly inching up the court, and taking as much time as they could, kind of trying to scurry around getting fouled. But Bill Self had that scheme just about right, how you're supposed to do it. But the advantage would lie in favor of St. John's with 3.9 seconds, no fouls to give. So, what you want to do is you want to attack the rim, because if you get fouled, then you have the chance to win the game from the charity stripe. So that's exactly what happened. And Dylan Darling, I'll have to boast about him because he actually came from Idaho State last year. So he's got some connections with the great state of Idaho, and wisely took the rock and went for it, because knowing that, if they foul him, he could win the game, or, pretty much cinch up the game from the charity stripe. Went in there and dramatic fashion, the ball left his fingertips. The bell rang, the red stripe around the backboard came on, and the ball went in. Game over.
Rick Pitino has been working magic in his second season at St. John's. How much does a signature win like this accelerate the program's trajectory and change the narrative around this team?
Well, I mean, going into the season, my recency bias has been with UConn, and what Rick Pitino did during the regular season and in the tournament. This team changed my bias, and I had them going. I was more confident in them in the Big Dance than UConn. As I said before, I thought UCLA would probably win UConn. So I think he's already done great things. He's brought the Red Storm to the Sweet 16. The last time St. John's was in the Sweet 16 was in 1999. So he's done something in just 2 short years, something that, and he's 70 years old. So when they hired him, a lot of the experts said this was a perfect hire, bringing in a guy like Rick Pitino to turn things around, turn the culture around, give it that edge, and give it that tough Big East culture that was needed, and he did it. And so that just goes to show what some tough love can do for a program. And I think that this not only sanctifies that, that's the right path to go with in college sports. I believe, even though that these players are pros now, you still need to have that coach and treating them like a pro player and giving him being rough around the edges, because they will respond. And you saw Dylan. In fact, Dylan made the remark to the commentator after the game. They asked him, what did coach say? And he's like, oh, he was probably just yelling at me like he always does. And so that just goes to prove how far this program has come in 2 short years with the style that Rick Pitino has brought to the team. And I think that this only helps in recruiting, in dollars coming in from sponsors and boosters. I think St. John's is back on the map.
Yeah. Speaking of back on the map, Is this St. John's team a legitimate Final Four threat, or are we getting ahead of ourselves after one incredible finish?
Well, like I said, they flipped my my thought on them during the season and going into the conference championship, and I have them going further than the Sweet 16 in my brackets, and so I think that they're for real. And I had this matchup that they're going into against Duke. I have this on my bracket with the Red Storm coming up on top.
Nice. Dylan Darling, the left-handed point guard, held scoreless all night, drives to the rim, drains the right-handed layup over Elmarco Jackson and Flory Badunga. Patina said Bells, Darling, comes up to me and says, run power, which is a high back screen pick and roll. So I walk away and I said, wait a second. He hasn't scored a bucket. He wants to run the play for himself, but he's Bells. And not only did he do it, he went with his right hand. I'm real proud of him because to want the ball when you haven't made a shot is unbelievable. What does that do for a struggling shooter to have a coach with that kind of confidence in you to let you call your shot even after a poor shooting night?
I think what this does is it really shows that that dynamic relationship between a coach and a player, and especially a coach who's hard on a player, given the fact that he hasn't scored all game, and he knows what type of a player he is. That's why, he's got a guy from Idaho State playing in a pivotal game here with his hand on the ball when it really counts. And I'd like to say that that's because he came to Idaho and Idaho rubbed off on him, and that's what Idaho will do. So that's why future players need to actually come to Boise State and enroll here, because that's the kind of things that happen. But no, but seriously, I think that dynamic relationship that Coach Pete has with his players, it may seem like he's really rough on them, but I think that it goes deeper than that, and he actually believes in his players and enough to give a former Idaho State guard the privilege to take that ball and do that pick and roll and then hit the game-winning shot before the buzzer.
Yeah. Give me your favorite buzzer beater of all time, college or pro, and why this St. John shot does or doesn't measure up to it.
I don't know. I mean, I think this would measure up to my choice. And it's not necessarily my favorite. It's probably the best I've ever seen. And it wasn't even for a team that I was actually going for, but back in the early 2000s, you had the Los Angeles Lakers and Sacramento Kings playing in the finals. And that's when you had Kobe and Shaq and then Robert Horry. Well, Robert Horry made a three with 0.8 seconds left on the clock after the ball had bounced around in it. And so to me, that was probably the best one that I've seen, just given the fact that a trip to the finals was hanging in the balance. And Sacramento, I believe if they would have won that game, they would have went to the finals, and history would have been a little bit different. And then later on, I think in the finals, that's when Horry made some more magic with an incredible shot, and I probably put that up against that 0.8. I think he had one with 1.4, which was almost improbable of getting the ball in and making the shot to win a game. But to me, that's up there. But I mean, you can't write a story any better than what St. John's did, and especially doing it against the Jayhawks, which gives me even more joy that it was against a blue blood like the Jayhawks, and actually this kind of puts Self's career and kind of what is he going to do next. So, there's twofold on that. They won the game in dramatic fashion, and it also puts up, Bill Self's future of what he's going to do, and it makes it even better that it's against the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I gotta say my favorite, not really buzzer beater, more like last second. There's technically 9 seconds left. The Memorial Day Miracle. San Antonio Spurs trailed 85-83 in the Alamo Dome against the Trailblazers. Sean Elliott caught an inbound pass, tiptoed the corner with his heels hanging over the edge of the out-of-bounds line, never touching the out-of-bounds line, jacks it up, nothing but net over Rasheed Wallace at 6'11", nonetheless. Goes in. Spurs eventually win that game, but man, there's a lot of great ones out there.
I remember that game because I actually like the Trailblazers, and so I'm the product of like the Clyde Drexler, and
Yeah.
I really like that team with Rasheed Wallace. I think Scottie Pippen was on the team. They had a legitimate shot, and the Spurs just melted their heart with that one, man.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up here. Looking ahead at the Sweet 16 and beyond, what's the ceiling for this St. John's team? Can they be the Big East's best hope for a championship appearance or even a win? Or is UConn still the conference's top dog?
Before the UCLA-UConn game, I would have said, this is St. John's. Like I said before in some of our shows, and leading into the tournament, where I thought that St. John's was kind of given a raw deal with the seeding that they got. St. John's has back-to-back regular season and conference tournament championships back-to-back. That's 4 championships in 2 years. So then that tells me, you know what? The UConn Huskies have been dethroned. But here we are in the Sweet 16. The winner of the St. John's Duke game meets the winner of the Michigan State UConn game. So if things align right and my Big East keeps winning, we might get the fourth and final game of the season versus St. John's and UConn. I would probably give the edge to St. John's. I have St. John's in my personal bracket going up to the Final Four. And as of right now, all my Final Four picks are still in play. So I'm feeling pretty good about my brackets right now. So and I did have this matchup between Duke and St. John's in my bracket. I had UCLA versus Michigan State in my bracket. But my analysis over how I've seen the season gone and how I think that Coach Izzo's doing, I do think that Michigan State will win UConn, but I do feel like given how Duke struggled in that first game, I feel like this is a different team that they've met in each of their first 2 rounds, and so they better come with their A game, because I think St. John's got a lot of momentum coming into the Sweet 16 game.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Bourbon Beer and Basketball 1-on-1. St. John's beats Kansas at the buzzer 67-65, and will face Duke in the Sweet 16 on Friday. Nick, thanks for joining me, and look forward to the next one. Until next time, stay safe.